I caught my wife cheating, but instead of screaming, I poured a glass of wine, lit the fireplace and let her talk, because I already had the cameras, the proof, and a plan that would leave her with nothing but the clothes on her back. Hey everyone, glad to see you back here and thanks for taking the time to read this. Today I've got a fresh story to lay out for you, so let's get right into it. That afternoon I was sitting at home waiting for my wife Kathy to come through the door. 14 years of marriage had taught me just about everything there was to know about her. How she thought, how she reacted, and especially how she hated losing control of a situation. I knew her well enough to bet money she'd come rushing back, eager to patch things up before I had time to stew over them. It was just in her nature. She couldn't resist trying to manage the outcome. I caught myself wondering what sort of story she'd come up with this time. She'd been blindsided, and I figured getting caught must have thrown her completely off balance. Kathy had always been the strategist between us, the one who plotted things out, who played every angle to her advantage. I've never been one for games. If something's bothering me, I say it straight, good, bad, or ugly, and I prefer to deal with it right then and there. That side of me drove her absolutely crazy because it didn't leave any room for the elaborate plans she liked to make. Most of the time, I'd just let her win the small battles. Why fight over little things? If she wanted something and it didn't put us in debt or harm what we had, I'd give in. That way she was happy and in turn I was happy. It was a simple formula, and for years it worked. But Kathy knew there was a point I wouldn't cross, a boundary in my head that once reached there was no going back. I remember overhearing her once, telling a friend about it when she didn't realize I was within earshot. She called it the magic moment. According to her, it was when I got so angry that nothing else in the world mattered. Not my friends, not my job, not even her. Once I reached that point, she said, I didn't care who I offended or whose feelings got bruised. And when I finally made up my mind about something, there was no changing it. It might look to others like I'd made a sudden choice, but she knew better. She told her friend that by the time I acted, I'd already thought it over again and again, weighed the cost, and decided it was worth it. She said I could live without money, but I couldn't live without my self-respect. I'd heard her describe me that way more than once, and looking back now, she wasn't wrong. I found myself asking when exactly Kathy had decided that betraying me was something she could live with. She'd tested boundaries before, sure. One time in particular stands out. She came to me with this big idea about spending 2 weeks in Cancun with her girlfriends, a crew of women I couldn't see as anything but hunters on the prowl for men. She'd prepared her pitch like she was presenting to a boardroom, smooth, polished, and full of rehearsed lines. It'll be good for us to take a little break. It'll make our relationship stronger. On and on it went. I listened, then told her straight, it was a bad idea. A foreign country, sandy beaches, endless drinks, and those friends of hers with their questionable morals? It didn't add up to anything good in my mind. But I wasn't going to beg her not to go. I just said, it's your life, do what you want, but remember there's a cost. That was one of my go-to phrases, and she knew exactly what it meant. It was my way of telling her I knew she was making a mistake, but I was done fighting about it. If she pushed forward, she'd have to live with whatever came next. I added one more thing though, if you're planning to open yourself up to strangers, you'll be doing it without my rings on your finger. I'll need those back. That set her off like a firecracker. She yelled, she cursed, she refused to even think about canceling. I just sat there, letting her burn through her anger, and when she finally paused for breath, I said quietly, you won't have time to rent an apartment before you leave, so should I put your stuff in storage or take it to your mom's? She sulked, she fumed, and she stood her ground. Then, 3 days before her flight, she came home to an empty house and a note on the counter. It read, I've thought it over and decided I don't want to live here anymore. Now you can take your trip without worrying about betraying anyone. Enjoy yourself. And keep the rings, they mean nothing to me now. Her so-called friends told her to go anyway, to forget about me and have the time of her life. Instead, she spent the next 2 days trying to track me down. She never did. I'd taken some vacation time and disappeared into the woods for a few days, camping far from her and all her chaos. As I stood there, casting my fishing line out over the calm lake, I found myself wondering, almost idly, if Kathy had actually boarded that plane. My cast sailed toward the exact spot where, last summer, I'd lost a fight with a massive base I'd been dreaming about ever since. That's when I heard movement behind me. I figured I'd find you here, she said. I didn't even turn around. Thanks for ruining what was shaping up to be a really good vacation, she continued. As you can see, I didn't go. Happy now. I felt a little flicker of anticipation. Maybe this was it, maybe old Mr. Big was finally about to bite. No, I said flatly. I'm not happy. You want to know why? Because it's eating at me that if I had been just a little weaker, you would have gone, had your fun, and then strolled back expecting me to be standing here waiting like some fool. Still watching the water, I asked, "Why are you here? Trying to ruin my weekend? Not gonna happen. You know why? Because you're not staying. Go home, go anywhere, just get away from me." I gave her the rest in a calm, steady voice. "Since you didn't go, I'll drop the private investigator and file for divorce under irreconcilable differences instead of adultery. These days it's easy, we can be done in 4 months. Right at that moment, my rod nearly doubled over, the reel screaming as Mr. Big took the bait and exploded out of the water. He danced on his tail, silver scales flashing, easily 8, maybe even 10 pounds. My heart jumped. This was it. And that's when Kathy lunged at me. She hit me hard, cursing like she was born in a shipyard. I stumbled, lost my footing, and went straight into the water. The line went slack, and Mr. Big took the opportunity to spit the hook, giving one last powerful slap of his tail before vanishing into the deep. Kathy was screaming and laughing at the same time, and the water, barely up to my waist, was icy cold for early April. I walked out slowly, dripping, while she stood there, breathing hard. "Now maybe you'll talk to me," she huffed. "I don't want a divorce and you better." That's as far as she got before I gave her a gentle shove backward into the lake. She slid in the mud, windmilling her arms in a hopeless attempt to stay upright before toppling backward with a satisfying splash. And that's when I noticed. When I really looked at her, it hit me, she was dressed way too nicely for a spur-of-the-moment trip into the woods. And that short skirt? She wasn't wearing a thing underneath. The message was pretty clear. She'd come here planning to use her body as a bargaining chip, to distract me, maybe make me forget everything. Too bad for her, I wasn't that kind of fool. Now she didn't look glamorous at all. She was shivering from the cold, streaked with mud, grass clinging to her skin. She started to climb out of the water, sucking in a breath to start yelling, and I gave her another shove, sending her right back in with a splash. When she stood up again, I raised my hand. "Listen, don't speak. If you open your mouth before I'm done talking, I swear I'll jump in there, hold you under, and wait until you stop bubbling. Nod if you understand." She stared at me for a moment, then gave a slow, reluctant nod. "Good. Now what do we really have to talk about? We both know that if I had given in, you'd be in someone else's bed right now. Deny it all you want, but you and I both know it's the truth. I hope your friends are loyal because you're going to need them. Maybe you can spend your time stealing men from each other, since I know for a fact every one of them has made a run at me, even the married ones." I turned my back. "I'm leaving. Don't follow me. Don't call me. And don't fight it when the divorce papers show up." As I walked away, I could hear her crying, calling my name. It didn't surprise me in the least that she fought the divorce. She went out and hired some high-powered lawyer who managed to get our case in front of Judge Edith Fine, a self-righteous Judge Judy wannabe with a reputation for forcing couples into reconciliation whether they wanted it or not. That's how I ended up sitting in mandatory counseling sessions. I nearly got slapped with a contempt charge the very first day for opening my mouth when I shouldn't have. "This is ridiculous, Your Honor," I told her bluntly. "I don't want to fix the marriage. I'm not interested in saving it. I just want out." Judge Fine locked eyes with me, her tone cold and clipped. "Mr. Jones, you don't have to like it. But you do have to attend, and I expect to hear your participation. Do you understand?" I was already irritated, so I pushed it further. "The counselor is so full of nonsense, I'm surprised her eyes aren't turning brown." "I understand, Your Honor," I said, "but let me ask, didn't you go to counseling with your late husband before your divorce? And did it actually help? Seems to me the divorce went through anyway." I paused, then leaned in just a little. "Now, let me run a purely hypothetical question by you, ma'am. If I were to say you were a terrible judge with no real grasp of the human condition, and that the community might be better off if you lost your re-election, would you be more upset that I said it, or more upset that I was right?" I swear I have never seen anyone's face change color so fast. She went pale, then flushed bright red, then back again like a faulty traffic light. Her gavel came down hard. "Bailiff, take this man and have him processed for contempt." Before they could touch me, my lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, seriously? You're going to throw a man in jail for asking a hypothetical question? You know your opponent in the upcoming race would have a field day with that. Please, he didn't mean anything by it." I smirked. "He's right, Your Honor. It was just a question. I take it back, though I couldn't resist asking. However, when you lose this November and you're just another private citizen, I'll be sure to look you up and give you a very detailed review of your performance. Sound good?" She let me off without the contempt charge, but not without payback. My 6 required counseling sessions suddenly became 12. The first 3 were a farce. I answered every single question with a line from literature. Shakespeare was my favorite to pull from. He had plenty to say about betrayal, schemes, and foolish lovers. But by the 4th session something shifted. Maybe I was just tired, maybe my guard slipped, but when she cried, I could tell it wasn't an act. The therapist had asked me why I'd married her in the first place. My answer caught me off guard. Because I loved her, I said. I always knew exactly how she was. I'd seen her manipulate people all through high school and college. That's why I never chased her. In the end, she had to be the one to ask me out. I agreed to go out with her mostly out of curiosity. What on earth could Kathy want with me? I wasn't rich, I wasn't some heartthrob, and I had no interest in playing the game she was known for. She ended up taking me to a party. It didn't take long for me to realize her ex was there. Though truth be told, he didn't seem all that ex. Within 3 minutes I'd figured it out. She was using me as a prop to make him jealous. So, I decided to have a little fun of my own. I barely paid her any attention. I chatted with her friends, danced with them, even swapped numbers with a few. By the time I saw the steam practically coming out of her ears, I knew I'd gotten under her skin. She dragged me outside, her voice sharp. "What are you doing? You're supposed to be with me." I just laughed. "What do you think I'm doing? You brought me here to make your boyfriend jealous. Since I'm obviously just the bait, I figured I'd do a little fishing of my own. You really need better friends, by the way. Loyalty doesn't seem to be their strong suit. I've already got 3 phone numbers, and Sue practically invited me over for an after-party once I drop you off." That broke her. She started crying. And up until recently, I'd always had a weakness for a crying woman. So, I made her a deal. If she acted like we were genuinely together, I'd play along for the rest of the night. From that point on, she stayed glued to my arm, danced only with me, and by the end of the night we were actually enjoying ourselves. When I dropped her off, I gave her just a small kiss, nothing more. I had no intention of seeing her again. But she wasn't the type to take no for an answer. She saw me as a challenge, and slowly, bit by bit, she worked her way into my heart. Early on, I told her straight that I wasn't interested in games. We broke up a couple of times before she finally seemed to understand I meant it. Eventually we got married. I'd had MS as a child, and because of that, fathering a child was unlikely. When we eventually found out for sure, I gave her an out. I told her I'd understand if she wanted to leave. Instead, she tore into me for even suggesting it. Eventually, I began to notice it, a faint, smug little smirk she'd wear when she thought I wasn't watching. That's when my gut told me the truth I didn't want to admit, and I made the call to the investigators. 2 weeks later, they handed me their findings. Sadly, none of it came as a shock. His name was Jonathan Barrett, a wiry little opportunist she worked with. The report painted him for what he was, a parasite who made a habit of preying on wealthy, older women to bankroll his lifestyle. Sure, I suppose some people might have called him handsome, but I didn't like his eyes. They had that calculating gleam, the kind that sizes up a person's worth in dollars. The first time he saw her Mercedes convertible, the rings glittering on her fingers, and that salon-perfect hair, I'm sure he smelled money in the air. He poured on the charm, she rewarded him with little gifts, and judging by how often they met, I could guess he was keeping her entertained in more ways than one. I never confronted them in person. Instead, I had the full report sent straight to the lawyer I'd already chosen. That was the final straw. I waited until I knew they were together, then sent her a text. "Emergency. Get back to me." Call, no text. She called 3 minutes later, breathing hard but trying to sound composed. "What's the emergency?" "It's not really an emergency," I told her. "Think of it more as a courtesy call. I'm divorcing you. Have Jonathan follow you back to the house. He can drop you off and then help you pack your clothes. Leave your jewelry on the vanity, along with your house keys and the keys to your car." There was a few seconds of dead silence before she found her voice. "What in the world are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the postnuptial agreement you signed," I said evenly. "You remember, the one you agreed to so I'd believe my lack of faith in you was completely unfounded. I'm talking about the fact you've been sleeping with that bottom feeder for at least 3 months. And I'm talking about the fact that, right now, you're in room 334 of the Seasons Inn, wearing nothing but a garter belt. What color is that, by the way, lavender or purple?" The live feed's a little blurry. It started small, just a certain look. A faint, superior smirk she'd wear when she thought I wasn't watching. Once I caught it enough times, my gut told me exactly what it meant, and I called in the investigators. 2 weeks later I had my answer. Unfortunately, it was exactly what I expected. His name was Jonathan Barrett, a slick little weasel she worked with. The report made it clear he was nothing more than a leech, the kind who preyed on wealthy older women to bankroll his lifestyle. Some might have called him attractive, I suppose, but I didn't like his eyes. They had that greedy, assessing glint, like a man calculating the value of something he planned to take. The moment he saw her Mercedes convertible, the rings glittering on her fingers and her perfectly styled hair, he must have smelled money. He poured on the charm, she rewarded him with little gifts, and judging by how often they met, he was obviously giving her something she valued in return. I never confronted them face to face. Instead, I sent the entire report straight to the lawyer I'd already lined up. That was the last straw. I waited until I knew they were together, then sent her a text. Emergency. Get back to me. Call, no text. 3 minutes later, she rang, her breathing uneven though she tried to sound calm. What's the emergency? It's not an emergency, I said, my voice steady. Think of it as a courtesy call. I'm divorcing you. Have Jonathan follow you back to the house. He can help you pack your clothes. Leave your jewelry on the vanity along with your house keys and your car keys. There was dead silence for a few seconds before she spoke again. What in the world are you talking about? I'm talking about the postnuptial agreement you signed, I reminded her. You know, the one you swore was unnecessary because my lack of trust was so completely unfounded. I'm talking about the fact that you've been with that bottom feeder for at least 3 months. And I'm talking about the fact that right now, you're in room 334 of the Seasons Inn, wearing nothing but a garter belt. What color is it, by the way, lavender or purple? The live feed's a little fuzzy. I heard her breathing hitch, the kind of sound someone makes when their stomach drops. I imagined her darting glances around the room, trying to spot the cameras. Stop looking, I said flatly. You'll never find them. And while you're at it, tell Jonathan that leather thong he's wearing looks absolutely ridiculous on a man his age, and in his condition. There's a site online called Funny Farm that posts pictures of the absurd and the pathetic. I sent his photo in about 20 minutes ago. He's famous now. No need to thank me. There was a beat of silence, then her voice cracked. Wait, I'll be right there. Please. I can explain everything. Curiosity got the better of me, so I poured myself a generous glass of my favorite wine and waited. Minutes later, I heard the squeal of tires, the slam of a car door, and the rapid clatter of her heels coming up the walkway. She burst inside, scanning the house until her eyes found me in the den. I'd lit the fireplace. The low flicker of the flames had always been calming for me. She approached slowly, almost cautiously. I stood and pointed to the wingback chair across from the couch. Sit, I said, my tone leaving no room for debate. She drew in a sharp breath, maybe about to protest, but something in my eyes must have warned her off. She sat. Saturday wine? I asked, already refilling my own glass. She gave a small nod, wisely keeping her mouth shut. I poured her one, handed it over, and settled back into my seat. Give me a second to get comfortable, I said, leaning back. I love fairy tales, they usually put me right to sleep. So if I nod off, forgive me. She visibly tensed, her lips parting as if to snap back, but she swallowed it down. Then with a softened tone she tried again. Honey, you know I love you, right? She paused, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I'm sorry, she went on. Jonathan was a mistake, but it's over. I told him so when I left. I'm sorry. Maybe you'll do better with your next one. Her voice had barely faded before her temper flared. Really, Shane? You're not helping here. I laughed. I didn't realize I was supposed to help. Help you with what? Finding another lover? There are a few guys at the office who might take an interest, but most of them have higher standards than that. Maybe if we can get your nude shots back from Jonathan, I could shop them around, give them a preview of the goods. I could even do a testimonial for you, I said lightly. You're pretty good when you actually want to be. Think that might work. Her face went pale and I could see her trying to gauge just how much I really knew. Please, stop being mean to me. Tell you what, I said, leaning back in my chair. I will, if you just tell me why. Why, knowing exactly what you stood to lose, would you be that stupid? She hesitated, her voice softening. I don't know why, exactly. Let me try to explain. You know that pair of Nike running shoes I've had for years? They're past their prime, worn down, but they feel so good on my feet I can't stand the thought of getting rid of them. That's what my love for you is like, solid, comfortable. I'd never give you up. Then she gave a small, bitter laugh. But sometimes, you see a pair of red 4-inch heels in a store window. You know they're impractical. You know they'll hurt if you wear them too long. But you also know you'll look and feel sexy in them for a while. Those shoes were Jonathan. Fun for a little while, but I could never wear them every day. Do you understand? It was just a fling. I stood slowly. I think I do, I said evenly. Thanks for explaining it to me. I walked to the hall closet and pulled on my jacket. She followed quickly. You're not throwing me out tonight, are you? No, I told her. My lawyer says I can't make you leave until the papers are officially served. Even then, I have to give you a reasonable time to remove your belongings. He suggested 2 weeks, so you're probably good for 2.5, maybe 3 weeks. Her eyes searched my face, but I kept my tone even. You can't sleep with me though. I'll be a gentleman and move into the spare bedroom. I know how much you enjoy that custom shower you had me install. Her mouth dropped open. Tell you what, I added. If you don't make this ugly, I'll help you find a decent apartment. I'll pay the deposits, get the utilities turned on, and cover your bills for the first 3 months. You make good money, but you've never actually had to live off it before, not without me picking up the slack. I'll even help you set up a budget, I told her. No more spa days or overpriced lunches. But if you pack your own lunch a couple of days a week, you can still afford a night out every other weekend. I'll find you a decent used car too, but you're on your own for the insurance. Take it or leave it. Either way, you're gone. I reached for my favorite black felt fedora, a vintage classic from the 60s, part of the collection my great-uncle left me. Kathy had always said I looked silly in them, but I wore it at just the right angle before opening the door. She was still standing there trying to process what I just said. We need to keep talking, try to work this out. It's 10 o'clock, where are you even going? I gently removed her hand from my arm. Shoe shopping. Her expression froze as I walked out. I laughed to myself as I drove away, knowing she'd be hammering the speed dial within minutes. The calls would go unanswered. They were ringing away on the kitchen counter where I'd left my phone. In the end, I found exactly what I wanted, and more. She was the total package, left me breathless when we ran 5 Burmese shots back to back, then danced me into a quivering mess in her 6-inch heels. 2 years older than me but easily looking 10 years younger. Smart, sexy, direct. A woman who didn't play games. I worshipped the ground she walked on. She bought me hats for every birthday and anniversary. My collection's over 50 now. Kathy tried to fight the divorce, but when her lawyer saw the proof I had, he urged her to take my offer. She remarried a couple of years later. We don't move in the same circles anymore. Funny thing, I ran into the judge who'd forced us into counseling during my first attempt at divorcing Kathy. She was now just another citizen, and there for her second divorce. I almost got written up for contempt right there in the courthouse because I couldn't stop laughing. Dear readers, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.